Hello students, I welcome you all to this course on energy audit and management. So today I'm going to start this course with the basics of energy. So hopefully all of you will get some insights regarding energy basic terminology regarding energy and its types. So what is energy? Energy is the capacity to do work, and work is also, we know that it is a force multiplied by the distance, and the energy is also the first law of thermodynamics. You can say that energy can neither be created nor be destroyed. It can only be transformed from one state to another. That we all are now familiar with this first law of thermodynamics. So first law particularly deals with the quantities of the energy, and it will tell about the energy generation and its transformation from one form to another. In day-to-day life, we are having energy in different forms, as shown in this slide. At the bottom of the slide, that energy is chemical energy, which is solar, mechanical, nuclear, and electrical energy. So these are the various types of energy you can have. Now energy is classified as per its origin as primary energy and secondary energy. So first, primary energy includes crude oil, hard coal, natural gas, then nuclear energy, then waste, and then wind, geothermal, biomass, hydroelectricity, tidal energy. All these energies are primary energy, and if these energies are converted into some other form of energy which you can readily use, like electricity and heat, predominantly electricity and heat, so these are the secondary sources of energy. So secondary source of energy, along with electricity and heat, you may have convert your biomass into biofuel. So biofuel is also secondary energy. Then petroleum products like gasoline and diesel, you can say these are the secondary energy which are converted, or which is petrol and diesel is nothing but a transformation of crude oil into the useful, readily useful form of energy. That's why it is a secondary, comes under the category of secondary energy, and which is you can directly consume, shown here. So primary energy and secondary energy is the basic classification of energy. Now, primary energy, as far as primary energy is concerned, which is first graph at the top of the slide, explains the total primary energy supply of the world from 1971 to 2017, and which is converted into millions of tons of oil equivalent. And as you can observe that the various sources at the 1971, its the values in millions of tons of oil equivalent are now gradually increasing from 1971 to 2017, and it continuously increasing. And the share of different primary sources of energy like coal, oil, natural gas, nuclear, hydro, biofuels is also shown. So maybe you can, if you observe this graph, you can see that predominantly this primary energy is of coal, oil, and natural gas, and small portion of hydro and nuclear is also you can observe here. At the bottom, it is the same is shown in pie chart, and in 1973 you can see that the percentage of coal, oil, and natural gas is shown, and rest of the primary energy sources. And on the right hand side, in 2017, the share is for coal is nearly the same, 2-3% minus only. For oil, it is 10 to 14% decrease in oil as a primary source of energy, and you can observe that the increase in natural gas from 16 to 22%. Okay. Nuclear is also increased by 4%. And total overall primary energy supply or its shares increased from 6,097 metric millions of tons of oil equivalent to 13,972, nearly the double since 1973. Again, energy is also classified as renewable and non-renewable energy. The renewable source of energy includes solar, biomass, wind, geothermal, hydro, all comes under this renewable energy tag. And under non-renewable energy, it is of course coal, natural gas, nuclear, and fossil fuel. Then relationships of energy and power. We know that energy is generally stored form like oil. Okay? The oil is in stored form, and whenever you have to use it, you can convert that energy into your usable form. Like in case of the gasoline in your tank, the car is this energy is stored, the chemical energy stored in your tank. You have to convert that stored chemical energy into heat energy and then mechanical energy. So energy is the stored energy for use at any time. On the contrary, electric power is you can say after converting energy into power, you have to use it ready like electricity. The power plants are producing the power. The power you have to increase, you have to use readily. So power is energy over the time, okay, and it is given in kilowatt. And as far as electricity, you may say that it is in kilowatt hour. So this is the power, this is the energy and power relationship. Now, how important energy is? So you can see that the total share of various sectors around the globe is given, and the majority of share is of energy market, which is up to $5.8 trillion of market share is of energy only, and it is predicted that we are now in 2020 that goes up to 40% of the total market share is from energy sector only. Second one is of course agriculture with $2.5 trillion. Then telecom, $2 trillion, auto, proximity to chemicals, pharma, packaged food. Total energy market share. So that includes the 40% of total market is of energy. You can then imagine how important this energy sector is. Then as far as our course of energy audit and management is concerned, so how this is correlated with this energy and its market. So this energy pyramid is quite simple way to explain the energy audit and management and its importance. So bottom of this energy pyramid is energy conservation, then energy efficiency, and of course at the top it is renewable energy. So as energy is a very important sector, and it is very important thing which we require in our day-to-day life for various activities, but the availability of energy is very and availability and its supply is the issue, and some pockets of the world is having abundant energy sources, particularly fossil fuel in Gulf countries, but few countries are doesn't have any natural resources at all. So this the unequal distribution of the energy makes it critical for those countries who doesn't have a reliable and abundant natural resources. So they go for this energy conservation and energy efficiency thing. And after all, everybody is trying to switch to the alternative sources of energy, which is renewable energy. So in energy audit and management, we particularly go for this various energy conservation opportunities, and then energy, we also see how energy efficiency will help you to achieve the energy reduction target. Now, this graph is about GDP per capita versus total energy consumption in kilowatt per capita. So annual GDP versus power consumption is shown, and of course on this graph at top you can have USA and Canada. So USA is having highest per capita GDP, and of course energy consumption is quite high. It's approximately you can say it's 11,000 kilowatt per capita. 11 kilowatt per capita, and on the left hand side it is GDP. So if GDP per capita is nearly $35,000 per capita. Okay. On the contrary, at the bottom you can observe that China is shown. So China and India mostly at the bottom, and these two countries are having population more than 1.4 billion each, and with such a huge population, that makes per capita consumption is quite low. Okay, it's less than 2 kilowatt per capita, which is below the world average. World average is 2.2, approximately 2.2 kilowatt per capita, and their consumption is below that 2.2 kilowatt per capita. So that if you can imagine that India and China both are the developing countries, and if they are trying to if they become the developed country, then their consumption, per capita consumption, would increase. Okay, and that increase, if they have to match up with the current developed nations, how much energy they require, and from where this energy comes. So that makes this energy issue more critical. That what will happen if such developing countries like China, India, Brazil, they are at the bottom of this graph now. If they'll try to move upward, their total oil and other fossil fuel consumption, other energy sources and consumption will increase. So how to match up with that? That is again the issue, and where you need energy, proper energy management, energy conservation, and energy efficiency to increase the accessibility of the energy plus, but with a wise use of the same. Then why do we use liquid fuels generally? The liquid fuels, you can observe that liquid on this graph, that this graph is of BTU per liter versus the British thermal unit per liter versus various sources of energy, and where you can see that the highest energy density per liter is with diesel, secondly with gasoline, with jet fuel, LNG, ethanol, then 150 bar hydrogen, and lithium ion battery is having the least energy density, BTU per liter. So this highest energy density makes these liquid fuels more attractive, and that's why we can have this fuel in our day-to-day life. More uses of these fuels. On the right hand side, it's just a comparison is given that how much fuel we are having, how much potential these liquid fuels are having. So 1 gallon gasoline costs you around $3.92 approximately, which is so for 1 gallon Fiji water, which costs you around 7.15. So that makes again compared to the other sources, other utilities, this gasoline and the diesel are quite inexpensive. And that makes them really the attractive candidate as a source of energy. But as far as the energy is concerned, when this energy, while discussing about energy, we have to also think about food, because always food versus fuel conflict is there. particularly when we are dealing with biomass or biofuels. And both are chemical energy. You can take example of food or fuel, and the energy in a substance that can be released by chemical reaction to do the work. That we all know that this chemical energy is converted to heat energy, and then which can be used for directly as a heat or electricity. But food versus fuel conflict is always there. Now, the total world energy consumption scenario is presented in this slide, and the world consumes about 16 terawatts of energy every year, and out of for this to generate 16 terawatt of energy, approximately 85% of that energy comes from fossil fuel. So this thing we need to highlight. And but again, the good news is that the sun provides 86,000 terawatts of energy every year. So it's quite interesting and very good news as far as sun solar energy is concerned. But unfortunately, right now we doesn't have a mechanism to harness we harness that sun energy efficiently. You can just imagine that out of 86,000 terawatts, we need a very few 10% or 1% of if we are able to at least extract 1% of that energy, that will be a huge amount. Then again come back to the fossil fuel, as if the previous slide highlights that right now approximately 85% of world energy comes from the fossil fuel based sources. So it's first we need to study this fossil fuel first, or particularly the majority of it is the petroleum. So let us start the discussion on what is the petroleum and various derived outputs from these various petroleum products that we are using in day-to-day life. So petroleum, it is a thick flammable yellow to black mixture of gaseous, liquid and solid hydrocarbons that occurs naturally beneath the earth's surface, also called as a crude oil. Yeah? And petroleum, this word is a Latin word. Petra means rock, oleum is oil. So petroleum is a rock oil. You can say it also as a rock oil. So this crude oil is made up of mixture of hydrocarbons with variable amounts of organic and inorganic substances such as sulfur, nitrogen and oxygen, as well as metal ions such as iron, vanadium, nickel and chromium. Crude oil contains 1 lakh to 1 million different compounds. The origin of this petroleum or fossil fuel is, as we all aware, that most of the oil and gas starts as these are nothing but the product of dumping various microscopic plants and animals that live in the ocean and on earth also. And these microorganisms, thousands or lakhs of these microorganisms, plants as well as animals, they just dump into this beneath the sea bed or the earth crust, and after thousands of years this microorganisms, their plankton dies and they just settle at the bottom of the bed, and this seabed is formed. So beneath this seabed you can have your fossil fuels. Then how different fossil fuels that you found beneath this bed is kerosene. Kerosene is an irregular geopolymer formed at by random chemical recombination of organic compounds released by microbial decomposition. The various organisms which dumps on that seabed, their recombination of compounds leads to this kerosene formation. And at the top of this diagram, we can have the first kerosene is observed at the top of the bed, and this is nothing but the organic matter which is changed because of the increase in temperature, and it's converted into kerosene, which is a solid form of hydrocarbon. So at the top you are having solid form of carbon. Then at the middle, at around 90 degrees Celsius, it is changed into a liquid state, which is we call as oil. And if you go beyond that, at around 150 degrees Celsius, it is changed into gas. And a rock that produces oil and gas in this way is known as a source rock. Then these petroleum products are then categorized as per the gravity of that petroleum product. So American Petroleum Institutes categorize or classify these with respect to different gravities. So API gravity is that index is given by the formula 141.5 divided by S minus 131.5, where this S is specific gravity at 60 degree Fahrenheit. And you can see that if API is greater than 55, then it is a condensate, and which is relatively lightest. Greater than 38 API shows light crude oil, 22 to 38 medium crude oil, 10 to 12 heavy, 10 water, and 0 to 10 extra heavy crude oil, which is tar, bitumen, is comes under this last category. So from higher is the API, lightest is the fuel. So higher amount means higher is the API means higher amount of paraffin, and which is mostly observed in gasoline. So most common crude oil are having API between 20 to 25. Then crude oil is obtained at different locations, and you can see that the properties and APIs of particularly of oil is different at different location. Like in case of Gulf countries, you will get the crude oil of medium API of 31. In Russia it is 22. In America it is 38, and in West Texas, again in USA, in the top is the Brent plant in Europe, and in America it is API is very good, API 40. And again API plus, you can also observe that sulfur content. So Gulf countries having the highest sulfur content. The crude oil obtained in the Gulf countries is having highest sulfur content of 2%. Then in Russia 1.2, in Europe it is 0.4% sulfur, and in USA also 0.3% sulfur. So in Europe and USA you will get very good crude oil, very good quality of crude oil with less sulfur content. That's why it is called as a sweet crude oil. And in Gulf countries it is called as a sour because of the higher sulfur content. So of course light sweet crude oil is more expensive, but it requires as it requires less processing and produces more valuable added product. Why I'm showing this slide, because the fuel quality of fuel, the raw material raw crude is also important, because this crude oil is ultimately goes to refineries, where you need to treat this crude oil and then convert it into the petrol, diesel that we are using in our cars. Clear? So the quality of crude is important. Then what is petroleum at the molecular level? Take a minute, take a few seconds to the chemical formulas of these hydrocarbons. You can observe that the dry gas is methane, and if you move towards this right, the ethane, propane, then cycloalkanes and aromatics. All these, the carbon percentage, the carbon molecule, number of carbon molecules increases. With dry gas, with methane, only one carbon, and as you move towards this, the carbon number increases, and generally you are having hydrocarbons are having 5 to 70 carbon atoms in crude oil. So what is petroleum at molecular level? So typical crude oil without refining is having gasoline of C4 to C10 at 28%, from which you can derive gasoline. C10 to C12, 17%, you can derive kerosene from that. C12 to C20, 12%. Heavy oil C20 to C40, 29, and residue is 14%. So likewise, as the carbon number increases, and it accordingly you can derive the fuel. So along with the fuels, you can have a different products from the petrol, this crude oil. First fuels, of course, jet fuel, gasoline, diesel is the obvious outcome of this crude oil refining. Then petrochemicals is ethylene, butadiene, and toluene is the byproducts. And materials you obtain is motor oil and asphalts is are these other products from the crude oil. Then if you observe this formula, then you can see that the carbon plus this carbon, hydrogen, carbon in solid form, liquid and natural gas. So you will get the highest energy when you are burning the natural gas per mole of CO2. So per mole of CO2 generation, the natural gas or gaseous fuels are better than liquid, and the poor is the solid fuels, which is coal generally. And at the bottom you can see that the coal, gasoline, natural gas fuels with respect to per gram energy generated per gram, so kilojoule per gram. So of course natural gas will produce highest energy per gram, and in terms of volume also, solid fuels are generating more energy per ml is given here. So with respect to gas, that's why for gaseous it is less, so you need to compress the gas. So three stages of refining. First is distillation is given, and at different temperatures you can observe different products you can obtain. The highest is of course low temperature, means the gasoline condensate at the 70, then kerosene, and at the bottom is the highest. So only 40% of distilled crude oil is the gasoline, but gasoline is the major product. Then second stage is conversion or cracking. So thermal cracking or catalytic cracking you can do, and you can break this hydrocarbon into smaller pieces to increase the final value of the product. Then third is the treatment of or enhancement. So for that, generally what you can do is you can have a catalytic sections which can then treat the your products, petroleum products, and you can remove the sulfur, nitrogen, and oxygen from that. And particularly the outcome is sulfur, so you can have a very yellowish pure sulfur. In this case 99.8% sulfur recovery is done in third stage. So on overall you can say in oil refining process results into 50% gaseous products, 30% fuel oil, and 7.5% jet oil. So very complex process with lots of energy is required to refine the oil. But ultimately you will get different products as shown here: diesel, kerosene, industrial fuels, lubricants, grease, which is shown here. So that's all for today's session about energy, its type, and particularly we discuss about petroleum and the crude oil, its properties, and the refining of the petroleum. So in the next lecture we'll see the world and India's energy scenario. So with this I conclude today's session. Thank you all for your attention. Thank you.